Okay, I'm just going to go through a few things to consider when you know you have to move your aquarium. So this is going to apply to basically all types of aquariums. So the thing number one that I would want you to do is to hit the tank with some aquarium detox. And I'd want that preferably in the water for about a month before I do the move. The reason why I'd want to do that is that through the back of your tank, particularly where you can't gravel clean, it's very possible that that's absolutely full of sediment and waste, and therefore you could very well have dead spots there, so therefore hydrogen sulfide building up in the water as a result of anoxic bacteria. Now that product there is going to introduce bacteria from mud, which is incompatible with anoxic bacteria. Therefore, consuming the hydrogen sulfide, starving the anoxic bacteria, and in my experience, when I've moved tanks, I've had no problem when I've had the foresight to add the aquarium detox before I've done the move, or any sort of large re-aquascape. The other thing that I would want to do is make sure that I'm feeding super clean foods. So for say a month before the move, something like probiotics is the only food I would feed. Normally I like feeding a range of foods and the fish seem to enjoy it, but I'd feed only this food for about a month. The reason why that would be is that it contains a true probiotic, which is very good for the digestion of the fish, but basically when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo actually eats the poo. So it helps keep the tank clean. It'll also have anti-nitrate and anti-phosphate enzymes, which definitely help your water quality. Now the next thing I would do is do some weekly decent services. I would grab a gravel cleaner. I'd really give the tank a clean. I'd be trying to make sure that everywhere possible before I disturb the reef is really nice and clean. So I do some weekly decent water changes. The other thing I do is make sure I've given the filter a really good clean. So at least a week before the move, I'd give the filter a good clean. In a perfect world, I'd probably give it a good clean as well a month before that. The other thing I would do is hit the tank with some polyfiller, particularly if I'm disturbing and uprooting the tank. Then that's going to suck out any hydrogen sulfide gases that I might release, and I'll make sure I put a nice clean one in after I do the change. Now, in regards to commencing the move, so if you have the tank really pre-cleaned, all the vents cleaned on your filters, just try and make sure that it's in pretty good nick before you move it. Make sure your water quality is pretty good. Make sure your nutrition's good. Make sure your filters are pretty clean. All these things are going to have a positive effect on the fish's immune system. There's also immune system stimulants you could look at using if you're worried about your fish, such as Vogel. I'd also look at having some medications on hand, such as white spot remedies, because if the fish are stressed during the move, then you're able to treat them straight away. Then for a tank like this, what I'd do is I'd have a whole bunch of water drums that I can carry, and I will empty most of the content of the tank into those water drums. I will then have some foam boxes. I'll have some water that I've drained out of the tank into the foam boxes, and I'll have another bunch of foam boxes for putting the rocks in, and then I will have like a tub or something that I can put the gravel in. So the way I'll go about it is I will drain some water out to the foam boxes to put the fish in. Then I will drain most of the water out that I'll put in the tubs to relocate it. I will then move the rocks out and put them into foam boxes. I will then catch the fish, and they'll just usually be in just a little bit of water. to put them into their boxes that were pre-arranged. The last little bit of water I tend to discard because the amount of crap that comes out after I take the rocks out is epic. So then I will stir the crap out of the gravel and try to suck as much of that water out and throw it out, because the last little bit of water is completely useless. So at the new location, you do need to make sure that you've got water sorted so you can top up the water that you're missing that you've chucked out during your service. As I said, I'd make sure the filters are nice and clean. So then it's just a matter of unhooking the tank, taking it to the new location. When it's in the new location, if you've taken your sand out, your gravel out to give it a clean, then at that point you can put it back. Sometimes the sand, when you do a relocation, is so bad that I just chuck it out and start again. So just bear that in mind when you're relocating the tank, that you may be ready to chuck the sand out if it's that bad. Then I refill the aquarium, then I'll re-aquascape with any rocks that I have. If it's a coral tank, I might put the live rock in, I'll then pour the water back in. I'll then have spare water to put back in, or have water arranged to top it up again. Then put any treatments that you feel necessary, bacteria enhancers or whatever. Once all your filters are all hooked up, and then you're pretty much already good to go again. Anyway, it's also good to have battery powered air pump too if you're going to transport fish for a while. And the fish really transport best in a foam box. So if you put them in a foam box, punch a couple of holes in the lid with a pen so oxygen's getting in there, and you want to put just enough water in the foam box to cover the fish. So when they swing around, they're actually agitating the surface. When you're actually moving the fish and you're in transport, the fish tend to stay aerated okay because they're rocking around in the car. If they're sitting still for a long time, it's really worth putting the air pump on them. Or you can get a battery powered air pump if you're going to be traveling for any extended length of time. Anyway, if you've got any other tips, any very good or very bad experiences that you've had while moving fish tanks, then make sure you put a little note at the bottom of this video. Some of the things that people do wrong is they will change too much water during the clean. They'll have completely putrid filters. So they've used massive amounts of water to clean their putrid filters. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is move the same water with the same bacteria. So therefore, when the fish go to the new environment, they're healthy and happy and settled. What you don't want to do is clean out your filter, kill out all the good bacteria if you've cleaned it with tap water or something, put your fish back in again, and then there's no bacteria to break the fish's waste down. Other people, when they know they're moving, they freak out and they take the fish to the aquarium shop to get boarded. This is a really stupid idea, because then you tend to clean up your tank and you move it to the new location. Then you tend to get the fish back from the boarding, and of course there's no bacteria in the system now, so you end up with the ammonia and all your fish die anyway. So anyway, there's a few tips and hints there. Don't underestimate the importance of understanding dead spots, because I have been involved in customers that have moved their tank from one spot to another spot, and then after the move all their fish were dying, and they seem to do everything right, but they've underestimated all the crap that builds up in the back of the reef and the dead spots that form there. And then the hydrogen sulfide is released, and then that's taken with them to the new location, and then the fish basically die of hydrogen sulfide poisoning over a period of weeks. So if you're ever worried about that, you put polyfilter in to suck the hydrogen sulfide out, and if you do have the foresight before you start, you are able to put in aquarium detox to kill the hydrogen sulfide before you start. And that's why I tend to just don't disturb the rocks until I drain the water right down, and then once I start disturbing the rocks, that last little bit of water, I just chuck it out anyway, just to reduce my risk. Because when you've been involved in tank tragedies, it's certainly an issue. Also be aware of the temperature. You want to try and keep the fish in a temperate room, in a temperate car. in somewhere where the water and the fish are staying the same temperature, and preferably where you're comfortable. And if you have to transport your fish on a trailer or something and they get freezing cold, you really want to keep the fish and the water together, and then you want to just make sure that you don't move the fish in a nice warm car, move the water in a freezing cold trailer, and then get to the other environment and shock the fish, introducing them back in. Anyway, give us your tips. The fun of moving. So we normally move tanks very efficiently, and it's very rare that we'll lose a single fish. So if you follow these tips, then you shouldn't be scared of moving. It just takes about a day. Moving a big tank takes several hours, but you get very good at it. So if you're in the Sydney metropolitan area and you don't want the hassle and you don't want the risk and you don't want the great exercise, then you can always call us, because we'll do it for you. Particularly call us if you're 4 floors up in an apartment with no elevator, because a lot of the times we move tanks like this and we move from the 4th floor of an apartment with no elevator to the 5th floor of an apartment with no elevator. Very good exercise for me, and that's how I keep my athletic, perfect body with a big fat beer belly. You need a lot of beer to get over that.